right, so I'm going to wrap up the day with this last general session. And this is a project that's really near and dear to my heart. We've been working on this project at the Alliance for about 9 months, and I know many of you have participated in it. Some of you are hearing about it for the first time. And so what I want to do is kind of set the groundwork for how we got to where we got, and then the roundtable discussion will really focus on the indicators that we've chosen to try to help us get a sense of how are we doing. So I think the first place I want to start is, what's a dashboard? What is a Colorado sustainability dashboard? And it's just like your dashboard in your car. It's supposed to be a quick way for us to get a sense of really what's going on. How are we doing? Are we making progress? So it gives us that reference point that I think all of us would like to have. It is a set of indicators, something that is already being measured, and how they may be interrelated with one another. A gauge of progress, or I like to say maybe lack of, so give us an indication of where we should put some resources. And then also a decision-making tool. This is something that I really want to focus the roundtable discussion around, is how do we get our leaders, our elected officials, to use this tool in their decision-making process. And finally, an awareness-building mechanism. It is still hard for me to know that if you go out on the sidewalks of Denver and you ask people what sustainability is, many will look at you with kind of a blank deer-in-the-headlights look. We just don't really know how to message it well in a way that the lay people out there will get. And so hopefully this tool will allow us to have something that's tangible that we can get people to have a better awareness around sustainability. Why create it? So 9 months ago when well actually about a year ago when we started talking about this tool, we felt, well, there should be something like this in Colorado already, so let's look. And we did, and what we found is, sure, there are a lot of mechanisms out there for tracking our progress, but they're not really that kind of down and dirty, quick snapshot. What they are a fat report that you just really need to read, and most of the time, your layperson on the street or your elected official is not necessarily going to take the time to do that. So these are just 3 that are out there that I highly recommend. They're great tools. They're just not that dashboard that we're looking at. And then the question, a little bit of a spin-off on what John's previous quote was about, but for me it was all about, well, how can we know where we're going if we don't really know where we are? So again, this was a reason to create this tool. In order to create it as a nonprofit with way too much work, and trying to save the world, as those of you in the nonprofit world know, is a daunting task, and there's never enough resources. So we decided to bring on a graduate level intern. Her name was Ashley Raleigh. She was hoping to be here today, and she just couldn't get away from a meeting that she had this afternoon. But she was at the time a student at the UC Denver School of Public Health, and I love the idea of having a public health student create this dashboard for us, because I think framing sustainability as a public health issue is one way to get the people out there who aren't aware of what sustainability is really excited about it, because it really is about our health, the health of the planet. Then we decided to embark on a long research and methodology portion to get us to a tool that would work. And then we got stakeholder input, and I'm going to show you guys who we got input from already, and many of you in this room provided that input. At this point, I am convinced that I need a little bit more help, and I'm in the process of creating an advisory committee, and I see at least one person in the audience who has agreed to do that, and another one who was supposed to be here and couldn't due to a dying pet, but I know you all know him, and I'm going to be seeking some more names, hopefully from the people sitting in the audience today. And then we're going to need, again, some help from graduate level students to get us to the point where we finalize indicators and we measure. And so I'm hoping to do that in the first semester of 2013. I'm hoping to do a cross-sectional team this time, getting some MBA students, some public affairs students, and some environmental policy students. So if you know of any great graduate students out there who might be interested in analytical work, statistical work, please let me know. The research phase of Ashley's project, and she did a practicum with us, and then that turned into her capstone project. So she really spent the bulk of her senior year working on this. These were most of the indicator projects and tools that are out there today that she looked into to see what would make sense for us as far as building this dashboard. And then from there, we decided that there were really 4 things that we needed for the dashboard tool. And so the first and really most important to us was the fact that we're different in Colorado. There are some things that we passionately care about in this state that maybe people in another state don't have as high up on their radar or their agenda. So that relevancy factor was the #1 piece. Then we also felt that we want this to be a statewide tool, so we don't want to look at indicators that are really skewed by regional variation. So for example, cost of living, while it's a great indicator, is probably not one that we would put on a statewide dashboard. Same with housing prices, affordability of housing. It's just so variable from place to place in Colorado that it doesn't make sense to list it on a statewide tool. Then we also said, well, we don't want to be in the business of actually going out and doing studies or finding people to do a new study, because what we want are existing indicators, ones that are being measured consistently from either year to year or every 5 years, because we want to start building some trend lines associated with these indicators. And so we really need things that are already being measured. And then the 4th and last was that it really could be standardized as a percentage or ratio to give us a better sense of kind of that indicator. These are all the stakeholders so far that have contributed to the project. And if I've missed anybody, I'm sorry, just let me know and I'll put your organization on this list. But lots of great folks working on sustainability that have looked at this tool and provided input. So here's where the meat starts coming in. These are our 12 sections that we determined we really needed to have on the dashboard. There were 11 issue areas that are of no surprise, I think, to the people sitting in this room, but we also decided that we needed a demographics section, something that would give us a good sense of what's happening with our population, what's happening with our urbanization, where are people living, what's the ethnic makeup, and so on and so forth. So because this is an energy roundtable, I'm going to focus on energy and just give you guys a sense of what we did with that section. These are the 3 indicators that we have on the indicators list on the dashboard right now. So net energy generation by energy source, energy consumption by sector, and electric power industry emissions. And so Ashley did a fantastic job of actually taking these indicators and doing some measurements. And she did a 3 point in time measurement so that, again, we could build that trend line. So she did 2000, 2005, or 2006, depending on what data was available, and then 2010. Excuse me. So this is where we are, and hopefully you all can see that. I know it's a little bit small, but this is the electric power net generation by primary energy source. And so this is all from EIA at this point. And what you'll see is that in green, we've got coal, and then there's a very little sliver of orange, that's petroleum, natural gas, hydroelectric, and then other renewables are lumped into one category that's in purple. And as you see on the vertical axis, it's year 2000, 2005, and 2010. And then energy retail sales by sector. So here you see the residential line in orange, the commercial in the blue up above, and then kind of the industrial in the aqua color. And, again, interesting data, but I would start to think, well, are we there yet with indicators like this? And then lastly, CO2 emissions. And again, something that we deeply and passionately in this room care about, again for 2000, 2006, and 2010 from coal, petroleum, and natural gas. So we did that measurement, and then we said, well, that's great, but it doesn't yet get us to where we really think we need to be. And so here are some proposed enhancements that we're seeing through additional input from some of the advisory committee members that are right now involved with the project. They felt that by trying to create some ratios, we might be able to give a better indication of really how this is happening and how it's affecting sustainability. So for example, and this isn't anything that we've adopted yet, but these are the proposed enhancements, to look at something like energy consumption per dollar of revenue, or energy consumption by sector per revenue by sector. So all of a sudden we're going through from just looking at energy retail sales by sector to something that's a little bit more understandable to sustainability advocates. That in order to produce revenue, we have to have energy. And so how do the two play together? So what we're looking at is taking a look at all the ratios and all the indicators that we've chosen to try to come up with what makes sense from existing indicators, but putting them more into ratios so that we get a better sense of sustainability. And then also identifying and tracking what we'd like to measure long-term, because we know that hopefully as society changes and as our perspective on sustainability changes, we're going to have the ability to influence some of these agencies in the indicators that they're tracking. So what are some of our next steps here? Well, I mentioned the advisory committee, and what I really feel is needed are people who are sustainability advocates, but also have worked on indicators before. So what I've gotten input from are either or, and that's been great input, but I haven't gotten input from people that have done both, and that's been the missing piece. So if you are out there and you've done indicators work, please come see me because I'd love to get you involved in this project. I talked about the hiring of the graduate team of students, and I say hire loosely. This is pro bono work, but hopefully, you know, they'll get some great experience out of it, and we'll be sure to write them glowing letters of recommendation for all their hard work. Then we're going to finalize the indicators and ratios, do the measuring so that every single one of our issue areas has a viable measure. And then what I'd really also like to do is make sure that the way that we present the information is visually appealing and interesting. Because just to list some indicators is not going to get people out there on the street interested in this. So we're going to hold a contest for an infographic that will be both web-based and then also to be able to be printed on hopefully front and back page, so short, simple, and sweet, to present the information and also show the interrelationship between many of our issue areas. We heard about one just now, water and energy, but we know that those interrelationships exist between most of those issue areas. Then we're going to release our 2012 dashboard. And all of you are going to be part of that release process because by attending this today, you're now on our mailing list. And so we hope that you will all start using this tool in some of the decision making in your regions, in your work. So with that, the roundtable discussion coming up. I'm just presenting you with just the kind of high level piece, and everyone sitting in the audience right now is going to have a hard choice to make because the sessions in the afternoon are concurrent, so you're going to need to pick the one that you want to go to. The session on the Colorado Sustainability Dashboard is going to focus on showing you where the draft is and the indicators that we've chosen, and then probably taking 3 of those issue areas and really trying to get those ratios defined in a better way to show sustainability. And then talking and brainstorming about how we get this tool to be used as a decision-making tool for our elected leaders, for our decision makers, and for all of you as a viable and widely accepted tool. So those are my two things, and then Q&A, which again, we're not going to have necessarily time for here, but in the roundtable discussion, I hope to have an hour and a half to answer any and all questions that you might have.